All right, perfect. So let's get into Shortstop 2SC, the growth regulator. We're going to show you a range of photos, but I think this is an excellent opportunity for you guys to add to your plant health care program. I think we'll talk about it, but there's potential to add customers and even support other landscapers in the market with this. So Shortstop is a program, not a product. You can see not treated on the left versus treated. It's a lot denser, thicker green leaves, smaller. So what we're getting here is a 22.3% paclobutrazole. We're getting thicker leaf cuticles. We're reducing the vegetative growth of this. We're increasing the root development because we're essentially stopping the elongation because we're reducing the gibberellic acid. So we're taking that energy from the elongation that we would normally get, and we're putting it back into the roots, and we're increasing the chlorophyll production, and we're making favorable hormonal changes. And then essentially we're making the stomata control smaller and tighter, so we don't have as much water loss, and we're getting more carbohydrate storage. And then we're getting a huge impact of additional chlorosis in the tree from this. This can be applied either by a soil application for trees, and now with the new label we have either soil or foliar spray for the shrubs. So there's big advantages to this. So here's a photo of how we can help, reducing pruning, right? We do the pruning, and then we could come in on this shrub and either do a soil application, or we could spray it as a foliar application. So what this is going to do is we're going to improve the appearance. We're going to make a healthier looking plant, better density. We're going to be able to reduce labor because instead of coming out to prune 3 or 4 times a year, maybe we'll only have to do it once. This could be useful in difficult site issues, drought protection, chlorotic conditions. If a tree's struggling, this may be a way. This is going to improve disease resistance on these trees by making the leaves thicker, by making smaller leaves denser. All these have effects with it. And then improve appearance. All right, so we're going to have better plant density. We're not going to have nearly as much growth, better in color. We're going to have smaller internodal growth, and we're going to have plants within boundaries. So here's before and after. So you can see the difference, how it's so much tighter, so much more denser, and a lot more green color in it. So this is a big advantage, on hedges, like burning bush hedges, anywhere like that. For instance, they planted the wrong tree up by the house. Well, this may be a way to slow it down so it's not growing as fast. Trees in the urban canopy, in between the street and sidewalk. This is a perfect opportunity for this product. More improved appearance, untreated versus treated. This is at Michigan State, PGR before. You can see what they look like. They pruned them, and now it's more controlled. It's improved color. They don't have to prune it nearly as much. So this is a bigger service. And as you can see, look at the reduction in elongation growth. I mean, it's a lot tighter. It's a healthier. It's going to be easier to maintain just after using the Shortstop 2SC. Here's a big way to reduce labor, right? Huge holly. Think of the work that goes into pruning this. So this was treated with Shortstop 2SC in 2018. So it used to take 4 full shearings and shaping during a 16-week growth period, which is 32 man-hours per season. In 2019, they only had to do 3 light tip prunings during the 16-week growth period and 6 man-hours per season. So that's a huge amount of time savings for a landscaper that you guys could be subcontracting for. Think of the advantages of that, how much more time he has, and he can go do other things. So these are some of the things to think about as opportunities. Supporting plant health care in difficult areas, parking lots, prime example, backyard and a pool, limited area, you can reduce how often you need to prune in those areas. Excessive growth, you're decreasing how much you have to do. You're going to help the root support and reduce soil situation. So what Shortstop does is it actually increases the fine root hairs and the root mass down in the ground, which is going to improve, in different soil situations. It's going to help with low moisture, so you're going to have trees that don't struggle as much. Parking lot islands, anything like that, that heat that pushes through. So you can see untreated versus treated. So it's going to increase the cuticle. It's going to have a waxier leaf, which is going to help reduce water loss. It makes the guard cells in the stomata a lot tighter. It constricts them. We increase the fine root development like we talked about. And you could use this in conjunction with hydrotane, which enhances how nutrients uptake. So this is going to enhance how the Shortstop goes into it. So you're going to have more usable water in that area as well, which is going to improve the overall effectiveness of the treatment. Soil availability, look at the parking lot. This was the summer of 2018 before treatment. And then they came in with one application, and now look how the tree's doing. So much greener, healthier, smaller leaves. It's not as full. So the appearance looks greatly enhanced. Typically the way Shortstop works is it's a 3-year product in most areas across. We have a map that we can talk about, but essentially you're going to see a 50 to 60% reduction in growth the first year. And then that second and third year, you're going to see an 80 to 85% reduction in growth. So this treatment is actually lasting 3 years. So that's a big advantage. People are going to see the effects ongoing. Trees that are damaged in construction, this may be a route to recovery. But when we say recovery, that may take 9 to 10 years. That's just not going to be one application and you're done. You have to build the tree back up. What does drought stress do to a plant? Well, if transpiration is exceeding water availability, then the tree is going to trigger stress, and we're going to get that response. And without the abscisic acids reducing in the opening of the stomata, that photosynthesis decreases. And once we lose photosynthesis, the tree cannot live. We're not producing proteins, carbs, or hormones, or any of that. And then we get some desiccation. We'll get leaf drop, or essentially the tree could die if it doesn't get the water. But the big deal of all this, once we start losing water, we lose our fine root hairs. They die, which will not allow water uptake. So just wanted to share kind of what the science is saying. So there's articles out there about how Shortstop 2SC can help with drought tolerance, and containerized English and evergreen oaks. So there's research out there showing how this product works. So if you guys want it and need that data, we can get it to you. And improvements in chlorotic trees, after one treatment, you can see these are not in natural ranges. It's probably a misplaced plant, which is chlorosis, or it doesn't have the proper soil. Which is common in most of these new residential neighborhoods, right? Because they take all the topsoil and sell it, and then we're planting back into clay or sand or just poor soils. So it could be a high pH soil, with availability of specific micronutrients. But the main reason is, root mycorrhizae are not able to function properly. So with these treatments, which are included in Shortstop 2SC, and then we're going to talk about Menjet FE, work extremely well together, and they're going to improve informants.
Trent,
yes,
a quick comment. Interesting story. When I was in school in Alabama, there was a field that had 2 different kinds of clay. One was the typical red clay you see in the soils in the South. The other was a gray clay, and they crossed over somewhere in the middle of the field. And there were fence rows and plants growing along the fence rows. along the fields. And the red clay is acidic, and the gray clay was alkaline. And we had entirely different tree species growing on these two sites. And as it was explained to me at the time, before I really understood it, it wasn't that the tree species preferred one or the other, because they were literally, a few hundred feet apart. It was because these mycorrhiza simply could not function adequately in the opposite type of acidity or alkalinity. And so the mycorrhiza fungi could not associate with the roots, which gave the trees the necessary nutrient and water uptake support to survive. The end result was that the only place those trees grew were where their mycorrhiza were tolerant, either acidic or alkaline. So on either side of this field, completely different tree species growing along these fence rows. And it was a pretty fascinating example of how important mycorrhiza are and why trees that don't belong in these kinds of conditions look so terribly. Just because we like them is not a good enough reason to plant them.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob.
Yep.
So let's take some just photos looking at the improvement of appearance with chlorotic trees with Shortstop. All right. Treated versus non-treated. Look how much smaller the growth is and how much denser it is, and the color difference. On the picture on the right, you see treated versus not treated. There's not as much chlorosis in that tree, of that size. It looks healthier. So it does make a big difference. And now let's get into some of the shrubs. So this is a spirea growing in the Chicago area. High pH soil limits trees and shrubs by eliminating the micronutrient availability. But what we're doing is the effectiveness of the mycorrhizae associated with this affects the success of many plants. Sorry, a little tongue-tied today. But what Shortstop does is it regulates growth and it improves that plant performance and appearance, which is huge. There's such a difference between this not treated and treated plant. You also see some disease resistance because the paclobutrazol is from a fungicide family. So you do see some fungicidal properties with it. So you get disease resistance like powdery mildew, untreated versus treated. These are good things to see, and some of the advantages. Disease resistant with black spot and roses. I mean, look at the big difference in this plant, untreated versus treated. There's significant difference, but look how much healthier the plants are. And one thing with knockout roses is they're very prone to drought stress. So this is a big help to help prolong them and keep the health with those. Apple scab, this is another way to treat for that, because the thicker leaf cuticles is going to make it harder for it to adapt. So you can see the difference versus untreated versus treated on that. So there is studies that talk about apple scab and cytospora canker using paclobutrazol and the effectiveness of it. Which is really key and interesting, So there is data showing that this works. And then soil and foliar applications with Shortstop 2SC. So we had our AccuFlow kit. This is kind of a sneak peek of what is coming soon for us with our soil injector. But there's several methods to apply soil drenches with Shortstop 2SC, but it requires an exact dose based on the ready-to-use formulation. So we're providing the correct dose that will regulate tree growth for up to 3 years and all the additional benefits that we've talked about. It's a premix rate of 1 part chemical to 11 parts water. This is all based on the label, and there are supplemental charts that refine the rates by the plant species on the label, but we've also created a chart for you guys to take a peek at. If applying by a drench, you're just going to dig around the tree and dig 2 to 3 inches out and a depth 3 to 4 inches down, because you want to get through the mulch, and you're just going to pour that ready-to-use formulation equally around the tree. Uh, here's the tree rate charts for soil drench or an injection of the Shortstop PGR. It's based on the DBH, as you can see it going across the tree DBH. It goes from 4 up to 20 inches, and then it's based on the species. So a red bud would be a 50 milliliters per inch of the ready-to-use formulation. So you would need 500 milliliters for a 10-inch tree. And then a ash tree or a blue spruce is a 200 milliliter rate. So a 10-inch tree would be 2,000 milliliters. And then down here at the bottom, we have a nice little batch size. So if you want to do 1.5 gallons, it tells you the mixture rate, or up to a 12-gallon. And all this is located on our website if you need more information. This is the nice chart for the drench rate for the Shortstop for the shrubs. So it's based on the crown volume. So you're going to do length times height times the depth, and that would give you the crown volume. And then it's based on the ready-to-use formulation here. So a 4-foot crown would need 155 milliliters for a boxwood or privet hedge. And then you have your rate chart based on the batch size right there. So this is a very simple process for the foliar spray. You're going to find out the crown volume, but you're always going to use the mix rate. And the foliar spray is a little bit different because you're not using the ready-to-use formulation. You're actually mixing the amount that's determined on the label with 1 gallon of water to spray on that shrub. And there's a high or a low based on that. So you would do the volume on the soil drench or soil application, and you're going to do the mix rate based on the label for the foliar spray. So 1 gallon of mixed solution would typically cover 300 to 400 square feet. So how are we spraying these shrubs when we do this? We're going to spray it till it's essentially wet and dripping. The label does recommend a non-ionic surfactant to be added to this, but essentially you're going to spray this foliage and the woody stems and the buds till it's almost dripping off. You're going to try to do this in the morning or late afternoon and apply it when there's little or no wind and high humidity. And the one thing that you always want to remember is you should prune these plants before you do any of the applications and then apply after that. Because what would happen if you came in and applied and then waited a month and came back and pruned, then you would prune all the material out of the tree. So that's a key thing to remember when you're doing that. So apply 2 days after the shear shape event. It's not always necessary to prune, but like in this treated version, you would still cut off those longer sprouts that are there, runaway sprouts. You would remove them by pruning them off. And typically your foliar application will last 8 to 12 weeks before you would need to treat again. I treated my boxwood hedge at my house with this, and I did a basil drench on the boxwoods in front of my porch. And typically I would say I prune them twice a year. And then I did the same. I did the foliar application in front of my garage, and I was truly amazed that I didn't have to prune any of the hedges at all. But I will say the boxwoods in front of my porch did not grow at all. Essentially, they've stayed right at the height, which is fantastic. I don't have to prune it. And the garage ones did grow after the 8 to 12 weeks, and I did not reapply, but I didn't have to prune it at all. I may go out and touch up everything this spring and reapply, but fantastic results with it. So you can see the different photos of the runaways and pruning them off. So this is the foliar spray rate chart. You can see the wide variety of different shrubs that we have on this. It's in a low or a high rate in milliliters or fluid ounces, whatever you prefer. But you're always going to mix this with 1 gallon of water and then spray till it's wet and drip. So essentially the soil applied rate chart, you're always going to use the ready to use formulation of 1 part Shortstop to 11 parts water. This is a single application that will last for 3 years. and it can essentially be applied anytime during the growing season or when the ground is not frozen. On shrubs, you'll probably see 1 to 2 years with a soil application because they'll probably grow a little bit faster than what trees would do. So let's get into micronutrient deficiencies. So we do see these in some areas, not all, but it's typically it's deficiencies caused by unavailability in native soils. The one place that comes to my mind that I always think of is North Carolina, willow oaks. A lot of the new subdivisions just have chlorotic oaks. So they're really a non-native tree and they just can't sustain healthy growth. It's typically a high alkaline pH in the soil, and the leaves could burn in the sun and the tree will always struggle to thrive. So the solutions are very easy. You know, we need to correct the soil, and essentially what Jim talked about with the Arbor X is one way of changing the soil pH. You know, we could inject the micronutrients into the soil. So correcting the soil is the key. But as a quick fix, you know, we could inject micronutrients into the tree. And then if you combine the use of growth regulators, we will also increase the general health under these chlorotic issues. So taking a look at some of these pictures, this is June 14th of 2016, and then you're looking at July 20th of 2016. So significance change, green up with that application. Micronutrients in the spring. Typically with our old formulation, we were not able to do injection in the spring. We would have to wait till later in the summer when the leaves have actually hardened off. So you can do a higher rate in the fall, but you could do spring treatments now to see the results. You know, high rates are used until bud break. And then we do have the lower rates for the summer treatment period. But depending on how high of a rate you guys are able to do, you could get up to 2 to 3 years, dependent on how severe the tree looked, as you can see from the picture on the left to the right, the difference on how it looked and how it leafed out. The effects of what we're using with the Menjet FE, they're really enhanced with the Shortstop application. Oaks may accept injection even after leaf drop, and you'll still get excellent green up in the spring. And these photos coming up are really impressive. This is from our Texas rep. You know, a typical parking lot tree. They were probably going to remove that tree. He offered to inject it, and that's what it was in October. With one injection in May, that's how the tree responded. This is June in 2017. You see that the effects are starting to wear out, but it's really a lot healthier looking. And then he came back in 2018 in November and injected Menjet FE again and did a Shortstop application, and now that's the tree in 2019. So essentially, 2 years later, the tree was losing its color. We improved it. All right, that's the amazing thing. If you look at what the tree looked like in 2015 to 2019, it's truly incredible the difference we made. They probably would have removed that tree if we wouldn't have did anything. So you can really turn around trees with this product and treatment.
Trent, just a quick comment.
Yeah.
This tree was growing, as it says on the notes, in an absolutely horrible spot. This is actually an automotive parts store. This little island was sitting there, and any of you that work and live in Texas know it gets well over 100 most days in the summer. This had no irrigation. It had very little soil. So this is a worst case scenario. And many of the trees we treat this way, we treat in worst case scenarios intentionally to see how we can perform not in a normal yard, but in the worst case scenario. So that's what you're experiencing there. If we can fix it here, we can pretty much fix it in a lot of places.
Absolutely. So micronutrient solutions that delight clients. I believe this was Chicago, correct, Rob? And it was for a municipality.
I believe
There's
so.
3 trees. And we applied here and look at the difference, after one application. I mean, the tree really greened up. It looked a lot healthier. I mean, what chance does it stand in that little 4 foot or 3 foot circle? But we made such a difference, night and day difference.